It's December 2023, and if you're an IL2 player, you've likely spent the past 2 years wondering about the next project setting. By now, it should have been announced, but there's still no word. Then, at the end of the month, the first clues emerge via a developer diary showcasing in-game screenshots and 3D renderings of Korean War-era units. But without official statements, nothing is confirmed. Finally, in June 2024, the creators of IL2 Great Battles break silence. For the first time in IL2 history, the series would move beyond its World War II roots and into the Korean War. The announcement came alongside a new website filled with official promo shots, and as a bomber player, nothing caught my eye more than the sight of B-29s. Multiple B-29s, in formation, each in stunning detail. The big question on my mind was, would it be flyable? Would a developer that hadn't created a bomber since 2017, let alone a heavy bomber, make the leap to a fully flyable B-29 in their new project? But was this iconic aircraft destined to remain AI only? The developers offered no comment, leaving the community to speculate once again. While many believed it wouldn't happen, I wasn't ready to give up until the developers confirmed it outright. Then, in October 2024, a new developer diary was released, focusing entirely on the B-29. The comment section filled with players asking the burning question, will this be flyable? This time, the developers responded. Words like possibly and under consideration now surrounded the status of a flyable B-29. While the diary itself made no indication the B-29 would be flyable, the developers' responses hinted at a different possibility. At best, the aircraft would be flyable. At worst, it was being ruled outright. This subtle shift was noteworthy. It left a glimmer of hope that the B-29 might become more than just an AI asset. As of January 2025, no further updates have been made, and with nothing confirmed, I'm compelled to act. The purpose of this video is to make a case for a flyable B-29 in Korea IL2. For clarification, the term flyable refers to an aircraft that is fully player-controlled with all crew positions accessible and functional. It does not refer to an AI-only asset that can fly, or an aircraft where only the pilot seat is controllable. I've reviewed the most common arguments from those against it, and in the first half, I'll present their points as accurately and fairly as possible, before sharing why I see things differently. In the second half, I'll outline why I believe the B-29 should be flyable, and why it's critical for the future of the series. Some argue that the B-29 shouldn't be flyable because it operated from bases outside the map. In their view, the plane set should only include aircraft that took off and landed within the map boundaries. But why cling to this limitation? To me, the question of whether an aircraft operated from within the map is far less relevant than whether it operated over the map. This precedent has already been set. Take the Waco glider and AR-234 for example. Both were added to the Normandy DLC despite operating from outside its map boundaries. Few questioned those decisions at the time, and the developers clearly didn't impose such restrictions on themselves. In one official screenshot, B-29s can be seen parked on the ground. Given that the map doesn't include Japan or Okinawa, which is where the B-29s operated from in real life, it's reasonable to assume the Korean peninsula is being used here as a stand-in for their takeoff locations. This is a practical solution that doesn't compromise gameplay or immersion. If such a restriction were strictly enforced, it would severely limit the expansion potential of any given setting or period. I therefore consider this argument more trivial than legitimate. Now let's address another common argument, the survivability of the B-29. Some claim the B-29 shouldn't be included in Korea because it would be too easy to shoot down. It's true that historically the B-29 struggled against the MiG-15 threat later in the war. However, before that, they were highly survivable. But here's the thing. The survivability of an aircraft is not a determining factor in plane set creation, and never has been. The developers' past decisions prove this. Aircraft with questionable survivability have been included before, and their presence was never limited by how well they performed in real life. Once again, the past shows this argument holds little weight, and as such, is more trivial than legitimate. With that argument addressed, let's move on to the next claim, that bombers like the B-29 aren't popular enough to justify making them flyable. In my 8 years in IL2, I've seen firsthand how bombers are often the least desirable aircraft to fly. The most common explanation is that bombers simply appeal less to the masses than fighters. But I believe the issue is more complex. Part of the problem lies in how bombers are implemented in great battles. By merging the bombardier with the pilot, the need for a bombardier was removed. By omitting the compass from non-pilot crew positions, the ability to assist with navigation was diminished. And without the ability to reload before the clip was empty, or swap positions in the same spawn, each one of these design choices further undermined the ability for compelling multi-crew teamwork that large aircraft like bombers inherently rely on. Despite all this, I recognize that bombers are a minority. Or are we? Is there a demand for bombers within the community? To gain more perspective, I asked our community in the official Discord and forums. I put all this in a poll publicly so everyone could answer and share their thoughts. And after 2 months, these were the results. In the Discord, an overwhelming 96% believed there should be flyable medium or heavy bombers in the next title. And out of the 3 potential bombers, the B-29 was the most requested. The TU-2 came in second. On the forums, the results varied slightly, but maintained the same overarching conclusion. A clear majority favored a flyable B-29 in Korea. But notably, the second most requested bomber this time was the B-26 Invader. From these polls, 3 key points thus emerge. A significant majority agree that flyable bombers are essential for Korea. And if developed, the B-29 stands out as the top requested bomber. The TU-2 and B-26 come as the second most requested. So in summary, there is a popular demand for these kinds of aircraft. The data supports this, and I think this makes sense, because the IL2 series has always thrived when its plane sets were diverse, offering everything from fighters to transports to bombers. Variety and innovation, the words which once felt like the guiding ethos for planeset creation. But with Bodenplatte, that all changed. The series shifted from a focus on quality to a focus on quantity. Which brings us to the next point. There are a lot of people who say that making bombers takes too much time and resources to build, and therefore it is not commercially viable. Well, my answer to that is, can we afford not to? Look across the landscape today. The still young but ambitious title Combat Pilot has already announced the B-17F, and have already hinted that they are making a B-17E to better fit their midway timeframe. Cliffs of Dover is currently making the B-17 and Lancaster for a game older than the current IL2. DCS, for the first time ever, is making a full fidelity C-130 with more variants to come. And then there's Microprose, which is making no less than 3 B-17 titles, each featuring multiple bombers to include the B-24, the B-26, and the Avro Lancaster. And all of this has only been announced within the last year or 2. Mind you, these projects aim to deliver a level of fidelity that surpasses IL2's, making them even costlier ventures for each. Yet, IL2 today has, by all indications thus far, made no confirmation of a flyable B-29. But why the sudden influx of heavies across the board? Here's how I see it. We are nearing the end of what I consider the second generation of combat flight sims. The first generation was characterized by scale and variety. It allowed players to fly nearly any aircraft, but it lacked fidelity and detail. In the second generation, there was a huge shift towards this fidelity, but it came at the cost of the scale and variety we enjoyed before. Now, as we approach the third generation, there may finally be a chance to combine the best of both worlds. For years, the absence of flyable large aircraft in combat flight sims has been felt deeply,
But now, we have the technology. We have the experience. We need only the ambition.
We are entering a new generation of combat flight sims. So with a fresh start and the opportunity to define what IL2 can achieve, why not make bold strides to showcase what this new era can?
The bomber formations of the Korean War were much smaller than those of the Second World War. This makes Korea the perfect setting for IL2's new chapter, to experiment with large-scale formations and four-engined heavies. It also represents the ideal opportunity to showcase the series' latest technological advancements by implementing player-controlled heavy bombers, something which was sorely missed in Great Battles. Thus, if Korea is able to effortlessly handle 12 player-flown B-29s in formation, it would set a notable technological precedent for the industry, while staying true to the historical scope of the setting. Then again, if the developers decide to go to the Pacific later on, that would be one less important plane they'd need to worry about.
The last true bombers in Great Battles were the Heinkel 111 H-16 and the A-20, introduced over 8 years ago in 2017.
Now I know many will want to point out later additions like the AR-234 and Li-2, which have been added since, but I'll get to that in a little bit. The thing is, we're in the midst of a bomber drought, and it has been ongoing for quite some time. To put that into perspective, this means that Great Battles has been without a true bomber for more than half the game's lifespan. And with the projected lineup for Korea, this trend seems set to continue.
Now I'm not sure why this shift away from bombers has occurred. Fighter planes have always been more popular, but that has never stopped IL2 throughout its history to not include these less popular types.
A significant part of the problem I see is a loose interpretation of what constitutes a bomber. Some go as far as to label a fighter carrying a single bomb as a bomber, a line of thinking that's not only flawed, but detrimental. When we fail to distinguish between bombers and those with some capability to drop bombs, it becomes easier to justify skipping the addition of real bombers entirely. And while I wouldn't say this misclassification is directly responsible for the drought, it reflects a broader mindset or culture that deprioritizes true bombers whether intentionally or not. Over time, I believe this mindset has contributed in shifting the focus of IL2 away from the varied lineup we once celebrated the series for to something more akin to a fighter box, at least within the online community. To be fair, calling a plane with a bomb a bomber is not technically inaccurate.
So what I told you was true, from a certain point of view.
But to say that this is the same kind of bomber as this is a gross oversimplification. Unfortunately, this facile thinking has pervaded and gained traction in large sects of our community to a degree that blurs these lines and makes it difficult to recognize the reality of the bomber drought. Perhaps the easiest way to define a bomber in this discussion is an aircraft with tremendous range and payload, and it needs to have both. For this reason, the AR-234 and Li-2 are not considered true bombers. The AR-234 lacks both, and the Li-2 lacks in payload. These aircraft, with limited means to carry bombs, cannot be truly counted as meaningful additions to the bomber category, and do little to nothing to address the ongoing bomber drought. Therefore, for IL2's next chapter, a flyable B-29 would be the ultimate antidote to the bomber drought. Its purpose is indisputably that of a bomber, and it would be a standout addition to the IL2 lineup. Not only would it break the long-standing absence of true bombers, but it offers something completely different, yet compelling, that no other aircraft in Korea can. Which brings us to the next topic.
Oh, buttermilk sky, I'm keeping my eye peeled on you.
How many times have you been shot down because your gunners, whether human or AI, missed their mark? Or maybe you've completely lost track of your position because of dense cloud cover. Worse yet, you've lined up for the perfect drop only to be thwarted by that one pesky cloud with your name on it. These frustrating moments, all too common in the Great Battles bomber experience, are exactly what the B-29s were designed to overcome. When it first entered service, it was a marvel of engineering that revolutionized aviation. Now, 80 years later, it has the potential to do the same, albeit this time in the virtual world. I would like to highlight some of those advancements this aircraft brought to aviation, and perhaps, more relevant for us today, provide a glimpse of what new opportunities a flyable B-29 could mean for the genre. It's filled with technologies I'd like to see Korea explore, if they make it flyable and do it justice. The Super Fortress was the culmination of hard-learned lessons from the Second World War. As such, it was an improvement in nearly every dimension. It featured synchronous remote gun turrets, the ability to strike targets through clouds, and it even deployed guided munitions. Each of these advancements warrants a closer examination. For its defensive armament, the B-29 was equipped with 5 remotely controlled turrets. The task of defending the aircraft fell on one man, the CFC, or Central Fire Controller, seated here. From this position, he called the plays with his team of gunners. Control of the turrets could be switched from one gunner to the next to ensure continuous defense. The setup meant certain gunners had control of certain guns. In this image, the right blister gunner, officially known as the right scanner, had primary control of the 2 rear turrets and could have secondary control of the 2 forward turrets and tail. However, the bombardier, who doubles as a gunner when possible, had primary control of the 2 forward turrets, but this time, no secondary turrets to control. These turrets were synchronized to ensure that when they fired, the rounds would converge at the same point in the sky. It is similar to how War Thunder handles bomber gunner controls, albeit with the range problem solved. But perhaps what was most revolutionary was its targeting system.
You pick him up in your sight and keep him framed in the reticle. Every movement of your sight sends certain impulses into the computer, which immediately gets the necessary answer, me too, and offsets your guns.
It overcame all the complexities of aerial gunnery, so that the gunner simply tracked the target visually, and the computer would take care of the rest. For navigators, the B-29s fielded the various radar systems of its time, such as the AN/APQ-13, seen here. This enabled navigation when the ground was covered or at night. It also meant the radar could assist in bombing as well.
When the bright spot that is Fuji touches the black line, the instructions are:
Pilot, start 1/4 needle with turn, rolling out on the heading of 31 degrees.
Roger.
Bombardier, open bomb bay doors after turn.
Roger.
In the offensive department, despite a generous payload, and despite the fact it was equipped with the iconic Norden bomb sight, the B-29 saw widespread use of some of America's first guided bombs, specifically the Raison and Tarzan. These bombs operated very similar to the German Fritz X used during the Second World War. Essentially, the tail of a normal bomb is swapped with guided fins, enabling the bombardier to adjust its trajectory along range and azimuth. In addition, a bright flare on its tail assists the bombardier in maintaining a visual of the bomb relative to the target.
Raison control provides the difference between good and perfect. This group was launched way left of the target. By giving the Raison bomb plenty of right rudder, the bombardier pulls it into the target zone. The uncontrolled bomb lands about 1,000 feet left of center.
These weapons were so effective, they reduced the circular air probable of the B-29s from 1,000 feet to 200 feet. As you can see, for the player, these aforementioned technologies of the B-29 are not even the half of it, and already, they significantly expand the duties of crew members, which have thus far generally been depicted simply as gunners in IL2. Surely, for all this to work, new technologies will need to be invented. New AI capabilities will need to be, so that they can complement players who are flying solo. The B-29 is a long aircraft with multiple compartments. What will become of the player and those various interiors if the B-29 was cut in half? And what if all this was in multiplayer? To be clear, many of these challenges have never been encountered before, and to solve them would be a first for the series and the genre. But despite all that, the B-29 is a reminder that compelling gameplay opportunities exist beyond just flying fighters. These innovations set the B-29 apart and give verticality to an otherwise horizontal plane set. Today, the B-29 remains one of the most iconic aircraft to have ever graced the skies. It was a technological marvel born out of necessity for a form of aerial warfare unlike anything before and probably never again. Its storied legacy during the Second World War and follow-up service in the Korean War has cemented her in the annals of military aviation. And 8 decades later, with the power of digital flight simulations, both developers and players alike can preserve this niche yet important capsule for many years to come. In short, IL2 stands to gain far more by embracing the challenges of a flyable B-29 than passing on it. It would be a major selling point for the project, and as such, the business, the commercial, and the reputational benefits would all strongly outweigh any reasons otherwise. And as for the TU2, might as well give something for the Reds too. The rise of multi-crewable heavies in combat flight simulations will go ahead whether IL2 joins in it or not. For the eyes of the community have already seen the fighters, and now look into heavies. So for the players, if you would like to see a flyable B-29 in Korea, please be vocal about this and let the developers know we care about this. For the developers, I implore you, if there exists a dream to build a multi-crewable aircraft like the B-29 in the future, I urge you to act on it now, because the foundation for such innovation must be laid early, before the structure becomes too rigid. It is you who carry forth the proud legacy of IL2, and it is you who can secure its future for the next generation with a fully realized flyable B-29. How about it?
Of all mankind, and its opportunity for peaceful cooperation may never come again. But why, some say,
The flyable B-29.
why choose this as our goal? And they may well ask, why climb the highest mountain? Why 35 years ago fly the Atlantic? Why does Rice play Texas? We choose to
Make a flyable B-29.
We choose to
Make a flyable B-29.
We choose to
Make a flyable B-29 in this generation.
and do the other things, not because they are easy, but because they are hard. Because that goal will serve to organize and measure the best of our energies and skills. Because that challenge is one that we're willing to accept, one we are unwilling to postpone, and one we intend to win. The others will.